No, I'm going way too. I'm going far into it, like in the future. But yeah, oh man, that'd be really fun.
All right,
Disc only.
All right. Well, it looks like we got a plan we might work on in the future. But for now, let's go over to Anti-Chamber, which is the next game.
Are they gone? Are we not live anymore? Are we good? We're good? We're good. Okay, we're good. So, the disc-only crew streamed the Game Boy player with just the disc twice.
With third one coming soon!
But they seem to have missed a couple of things, which, well, I'll cover in this here bonus video. I mean, what else do you think this is? An entire video dedicated to Pac-Man Versus? The most important part of any Game Boy Player podcast is, well, the Game Boy Player itself. From what I can find, the Game Boy Player officially came in purple, silver, pumpkin spice orange, and the most common color, black. So, update. Whilst I was making the graphics for this video, I found out that there were also a red Gundam Char GameCube with a red Game Boy player, a teal one for Tales of Symphonia, and a white one for Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. The more you know. Other than that, only one more version of the thing was released, one for the Panasonic Q of all things, since the original would simply not fit under there. Aside from outside appearance, the internal hardware is the same between each one, with no revisions of it. Talking about hardware, one thing most people know is that the player is made with 100% locally grown, all-original, uranium-free Game Boy Advance parts. This, however, also means that the Super Game Boy borders won't activate, since it's acting like a Game Boy Advance. Kinda makes this the Frankenstein's monster of consoles, doesn't it? I mean, it's GameCube hardware, using a port to connect to GBA hardware, to then in turn use a bit of Game Boy Color hardware, which then can play Game Boy games. Man, technology sure is advanced. Since we're already talking about the physical aspects of the Game Boy player, I want to quickly mention that the game case has a slot to keep one Game Boy Advance game in. Neat. Now, most people find blank to be most people find the normal GameCube controller to be not the best for 2D/Game Boy games. With a good analog stick, for 3D games, and a D-pad located like the only public restroom in a shopping mall, and the size of someone's answer, how small can I sharpen a pencil? If you've ever done any research on the Game Boy player, you might have already heard about
the Japanese
GameCube, which is pretty much the Game Boy player's very own Bigfoot's abandoned father with how rare it is. What? Never heard about him? Me neither. So let's get back to the point. Other than one other solution we'll conveniently cover later, there's one option that's still semi-available as of uploading this video. That option being RAFNet's multiple GameCube controller adapters. These include NES, SNES, Genesis, and the one I'm personally holding out for, classic controller adapters. Soon, my love. Yeah, controllers. Another option is the PS1 controller converter. But since that would require, a PS1 controller, that might be out of the question for some. Also, I couldn't find it available anywhere online, so it might be Bigfoot's second abandoned father. Wait, I'm gonna go to jail for mentioning that, aren't I? Well, since we're already committing federal crimes, we might as well add using cheating devices on top of that. If you want to know the full extent of how to make the Game Boy player look the prettiest, but also list the timer, frame selection, and language options, you can just watch the My Life in Gaming video about it, link being in the description. To sum that specific part up, this cool kit called Extrems made a replacement for the boot disc, which makes it prettier, but requires some way to read SD cards on the GameCube. Shit! The cops here to arrest me for my crimes against humanity! Anyways, imagine this. You've been with your Game Boy player for a long time, really enjoying it, living the life, But things start getting monotonous. You boot it up, talk about stuff for multiple hours, and then shut it off. Same old song and dance every time. If you want to spice up your Game Boy player life, you can change the language in the GameCube main menu to another language, and the player will change to reflect that. So, unless you know the language you're selecting, you'll be in for a change of pace, some hearty laughs, or, in one case, people colonizing the comment section harder than the VOC in the 16th century. Now, one thing I've personally wondered is if you can use the GameCube to Game Boy Advance cable with it. Yeah, you heard me right. The GameCube to Game Boy Advance cable. It's a cable which links from one of the controller slots on the GameCube to the GBA cable port. This was used in an arms full of games to unlock some content, transfer over data, resurrect the Dreamcast-specific feature in 2 cases, and, my favorite, downloading minigames or other data onto the GBA which you then play without being tethered to the console. I just got an idea. The player has a link cable port which fits the cable, and it has GameCube controller. what if... You know, I'm not too sure about this since plugging something into itself usually results in short-circuiting. But here we go! Alright, so after getting a slight heart attack, you get an upgraded Gameboy play menu. Well, it's actually something different. Namely, what makes it so that it can use your actual GBA as a controller. Yeah, that's a feature. No more having to use the stick or stooping even as low as using the GameCube D-pad. You can actually use your actual Game Boy Advance, or SP if you want. This can be done by plugging the GBA to GameCube cable into the cable port of the GBA with no card inserted. Plot twist, there was a card inserted. Plot twist, there was never a boot disc inside, just a Dutch entertainment disc. Plot twist, the GameCube doesn't exist! What the fuck? I might have gotten a little ahead of myself. Let's unpack all that. If you want to commit heresy, you can press Start plus Select when booting up the GBA with a cart. This puts the GBA in the exact same state as not having a card inserted. If you want to go commit even more sacrilege against the disc-only community, you can always press A, B, or any direction on the D-pad to start the game. Now, one thing you might have already heard is that you only need the game disc for booting up the game, and it can just be removed during any point after starting it up. Kinda like how you can take the disc out of Animal Crossing also on the GameCube and have it running just fine. This is obviously because all the data it needs is then stored in the memory of the console after reading it once off the disc and doesn't need to read it again. This is also why if you open up the disc cover, the disc is static instead of slowing down. Third up is a regularly scheduled segment. If they say it on YouTube, it must be true. Now today's fact is, the GameCube doesn't exist. Well, not that much claim. I mean, have you ever seen or known someone who has a GameCube? Not really say it. All proof out there are just Photoshop pictures of boxes. See, this is ridiculous. That's all the time I have for today. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Now, on to the frames. First up, how does the Game Boy player know which frame you left it on last? My theory was that it saved it on the GBA player itself, but when I was testing it by taking the player off of one GameCube and putting it onto another one, it did put it on frame 11, which I had selected previously. But when trying to do it the other way with frame 9, so from the silver GameCube to the black GameCube now, it just went back to frame 11. This makes me think that it either saves it on both the GBA player and somehow the GameCube's own memory, or that it can differentiate between consoles and saves it only on the player. If anyone knows how to monitor the GBA player or the GameCube's memory, please try and find this out. Talking about frames, as some keen viewers might have heard from the second stream, Adriana made a tier list of all the frames. It's nice, but here's my list from worst to best. First up in big shite tier, we have frame number 7, the checker pattern. Alright, if you have ever scrolled through all of the borders at least once, you should have seen this one coming. One thing which makes a border great is not being distracting. Some of the most distracting things in life are optical illusion and high contrast images. This is both of them. One spot above that, we have frame number 17, the knit sweater. Ah, knit sweaters. What was once a token of gratitude is now known for being ugly. Anyways, this one could have been good if it was colored classically, like dark blue with white and dark red. But no, yellow, blue, and pink it is. Then, the last one for big shite tier is frame number 10, Oriental Yellow on Red. This one's also distracting, with high contrast between the red and yellow, which catches your attention immediately. Can't really think of a situation where you would use this border over any other border. Then, on to bad tier, with frame number 4, the tan Game Boy border. Now, one thing which makes borders great is how well it meshes with other games, how well it blends with it, how much it amplifies it. This one doesn't do it with most games I know. The only one I can really think of is Mother 3 with Salsa's introduction. One slot above that, we have frame number 9, yellow flowers on green background. I would say this one's a better version of frame 10, with it being more pleasant to look at and less assaulting on the eyes. You would think that this one would mesh better with games with a lot of green, but speaking from personal experience, there are better borders for that. One slot farther out of bad tier is frame number 12, the Archaeological Dig. This one's not too distracting, but the only game I could think of where it would work with is Mario's Picross for the Game Boy. This border is slightly higher than the flowers because it's actually kind of a hint showing you that you can connect the Game Boy Advance to the GameCube somehow. Other than that, this border is only good as a discussion piece. Still, at most, only the stick is an angel. Then, barely tripping and falling into bad tier, it's frame number 6, Camouflage. Wow, a pattern made for blending in with green environments does well with games with a lot of green. Who would have guessed? Anyways, this pattern doesn't only blend well with greenery and more war-oriented games, but also keeps you focused on the mission at hand. Still, it's a camo pattern, so using it with Super Mario Bros. 2 might not be the best choice. It's a nice border, I'll give you that, but the Z-button overlay and bezel give no tactical advantage whatsoever. Enough bad borders, time for the mediocre. In meh tier, we have Border 18, Space. Alright, I know some people might get mad at me for putting this border at the bottom of meh tier, but I think this border is just a little too distracting to be great. Yeah, it meshes well with most space shoot-em-ups, but the appearance of Venus catches the eye a little bit too much. Am I nitpicking? Perhaps, but I've chosen this battle and am prepared to die on this hill. One bad opinion later, we're at Border 13, chrome plating with some squares. Did you know? This border came from the future. Anyways, this one's nice, not too distracting, and works well with games with a very clean and shiny appearance, like Puzzle League. Then on to Border 16, Argyle Fuzzy Blue. This border is the epitome of inoffensive. Yeah, it isn't distracting, but it's just too deep dark blue to synergize with most games. Not the best, not the worst, just really, really mediocre. Now, from the most mediocre border to a less mediocre border with Border 14, multicolored vibrant plates. Finally, they finished painting over that chrome from Border 13. Anyways, as many people who have overviewed this border have noticed, this border is perfect for Tetris. As someone who knows a thing or two about the many versions of Tetris, the version I would recommend is Magical Tetris Challenge for the Game Boy Color. Then, from a game which has its origins in Russia, we go to something more capitalist with Border number 2, Yellow/Gold Game Boy.
Wario is the best!
Well, enough greenery. This border is perfect for Wario Land 4, which, well, you should play if you haven't. It's based off the same design as the other Game Boy Advance style borders, but I think it's a better fitting color than tan. Coming off of a border which definitely needs a change of heart, we come to Border number 8, Picnic Cloth/Joker's Pants. Now this one I do like. As is tradition with the Persona series, their protagonist's pants go well with Hamtaro, and because this is one of the Persona series protagonist's pants, this border also goes well with Hamtaro or more lighthearted games. I would bet it also feels like a picnic blanket. Then, from an odd crossover, we finally arrive at Good Tier, with Border number 1, Classic Game Boy Purple. Yes, the standard border, the default, the ones that all the others are based off, and the lowest of Good Tier. Yes, it's standard, and it's pretty good, but honestly, there are better borders that don't distract and mix better with other games. Then, above that, with a narrow margin, we have Border number 3 and Border number 5, Dark and Light Gray. These two are basically the same. Yes, one's lighter than the other, but they're design-wise both based off of Border number 1. Also, they're not even colored that different. For that, they both get the same spot. Moving on from their placing, this border is perfect for original Game Boy games with a combination of left and B to make the entire game grayscale. Now, on to something more colorful. Border 19, GameCube. Get those bland Game Boy Advance borders out of here. We're playing on the GameCube, baby! Not only does this border look like the system you're playing on, the on and off light turns on and off every so often. I mean, you should get that checked out, because that's not how GameCube is supposed to work. Then, hopping from home console back to home console, I guess? We get back to Border number 15, the red/blue border. Of course, this border is made for the Game Boy's most well-known RPG series, Pokemon. Some may say that this one's made for Ruby and Sapphire, but it also works for Red and Blue since they have the same version colors. Then, from colors going back to number 20, Blank. Who could have guessed that the second to last border would be absolutely nothing? I could. I wrote this entire script. This one's this high because of its general usefulness and versatility. Want to crop out the border? This one will make it easier, though the bezel still stays. Want to completely focus on the game? This one has nothing else to look at! Also, this is the only border allowed on speedrun.com. Well then, what could be better than something accepted by speedrun.com and very versatile? A border that goes with nearly all games. Let me explain. In the time before times, when video games were starting their existence, The rocks tricked into thinking were always furnished with another earthly material. That earthly material was wood. Wood was the best looking, sleekest, and goodest material to cover it up. Then, with the arrival of the NES, it got replaced by plastic shells. Nintendo continued producing consoles without wood. The SNES, the N64, the Virtual Boy. Still, in the hearts of the people, the desire for wood around their video games remained. Yet, no one spoke out. No one addressed it. Until it was nearly too late. The GameCube arrived, and Nintendo saw its sales weren't doing the best. This was the sign of the Earth, showing that this wouldn't be simply accepted. Nintendo saw their hubris against nature and corrected it with this border. The border of wood. Or it could just be that I personally like this one the most and that this entire list is based off of personal opinion. So, we've covered the borders. What about the setting to right of it? Wait a second, I thought that was the screen settings, not control. In the controller options menu, you can change from L and R in the GameCube controller to being L and R in the Game Boy Advance, and X and Y being select, to X and Y being L and R being select. This second option also maps the C-stick to the D-pad. I don't know why you would want that, but hey, that option's there. Now, for the thing I really wanted to mention, the screen filter. At first, you might think that Sharp put some ugly sharpness filter on, normal is unfiltered, and soft is smoothed out. But no! Sharp is actually the game unfiltered, normal is with a slight anti-flickering filter on and some blur, and soft is with that baby cranked all the way up. Finally, for the final topic of finality of this video, the errors. This first one isn't even that much of an error. It's the fact that GBA video cartridges just won't play on it. If you want to know more about them, watch this video, link in the description, standard procedure. This was presumably done to prevent people recording the GBA player playing the video. But to be honest, it looks even worse than... Now, for the first actual error, not having the Game Boy player attached. Yeah, for doing something wrong in the Game Boy player, it just hits a bunch of keys on a piano, like you've dropped a vase in Mozart's music room. Then, for the only other error I know of, removing a game without selecting swap cartridges. I know that the reason on the original GBA for its crashing is that it can't read any more data and crashes, but on a GBA player it responds to that input. So why couldn't it just restart the GBA player hardware so you don't need to reset it yourself? That way you can just swap carts without having to press Z, which you can't even do on the GBA as a controller. Scroll all the way to swap carts, select yes, and press A. Another solution is also making the eject button an off button. So before you eject it whilst pulling just enough force on it, it turns off and ejects it, and then turns it back on when it springs back. And that's that. That's all I wanted to cover in this video. If there's anything I missed, feel free to share that info in the comments. Now, for the people I want to thank. Man, I really am ripping them people off, huh? First off, I want to thank Proton John, the 8-Bit Drummer, Stephen George, and Tom, King of the Turnips Fox, for taking this odd concept of playing the GBA player itself and turning what could have just been a boring segment filled with dead air into a completely new podcast idea, and giving the Game Boy player the attention it deserves. Next up are all the people who made the TRG Coliseum this year possible. I might have not seen it all live, but man, it's worth watching. Link also being in the description. Thirdly, I want to thank the anonymous devs of the Game Boy player for giving the power to more easily record Game Boy Advance and Game Boy footage to the people. Yes, this might not be the best option, but heck if it isn't a fun one. Then, I want to thank the fans of the GBA player for innovating and creating a version that surpasses the original. And, of course, the fans of the podcast for creating fan arts and everything else, no matter how big or small it is. It's all great. As for me, I don't think I'll be making a video like this or any video in a long while. I've got ideas for projects coming out of the wazoo, with the next one being a little childish. I know I might have missed some stuff, like Rumble being included in a couple of GBA games and some Game Boy Color games being incompatible, but that's info you could easily get off of Wikipedia. And if I did miss anything else big, please put it in the comments. I would love to see it. Anyways, enough about me. It's time for the musical credits. Hit it!